Changi Airport is consistently ranked among the best airports in the world, but the people who work there see something the rankings don't capture. They see millions of passengers from every country behaving in every imaginable way. One ground staff member told me, "After 20 years, you develop a sixth sense. You can predict how an interaction will go before a word is spoken." Today, I want to explore what Changi Airport workers have observed and what it reveals about how culture shapes behavior. Singapore, a city-state of 5.9 million people at the crossroads of Asia. For decades, Singapore has positioned itself as a global hub for finance, for trade, and perhaps most visibly for aviation. Changi Airport opened in 1981 on the site of what was once a British Royal Air Force base. The timing was strategic. Singapore had gained independence only 16 years earlier. Building a world-class airport was a statement. This tiny nation intended to punch above its weight on the global stage. And it worked. Terminal 1 opened with capacity for 10 million passengers annually. Today, the airport has 4 terminals processing over 58 million passengers. It connects Singapore to 380 cities worldwide. And it has won the World's Best Airport Award at Skytrax more times than any other airport in history, 12 times and counting. But those awards measure facilities and amenities. The Jewel Complex with its 40-meter indoor waterfall, the butterfly garden housing over 1,000 butterflies, the rooftop pool, the movie theaters, the cactus garden. What the awards don't measure is the human experience of working there. Changi employs thousands of ground staff, security personnel, customer service representatives, and retail workers. These people interact with passengers from every culture on Earth. Business people from Tokyo, families from Sydney, backpackers from Berlin, tour groups from Shanghai. Each interaction tells a story, and over years and decades, patterns emerge. I should be transparent about my approach here. When I interview service workers about their observations of different nationalities, I'm aware of the risks. Generalizations can slide into stereotypes. Individual observations can be colored by memory bias, cultural assumptions, or a few memorable negative experiences. What I've tried to do is collect observations from multiple sources, look for consistent patterns across different roles, and present them with appropriate nuance. The patterns that emerged were fascinating, not as rankings of good versus bad passengers, but as windows into how different cultures approach shared spaces. And one nationality came up again and again in these conversations: Japanese passengers. Let's start with something every airport visitor knows well: the queue. Check-in, security, immigration, boarding. Modern air travel is fundamentally a series of lines. Studies suggest the average passenger spends 45 to 90 minutes of each airport visit simply waiting in queues. A check-in agent who has worked at Changi for 18 years told me, "You can predict nationality by how people stand in line. Spacing, posture, what they do with their time. It's remarkably consistent." She elaborated, "Japanese passengers stand with a full body's distance from the person ahead. They don't creep forward. They don't lean around trying to see what's happening at the counter. They just wait, quietly, often reading something or looking at their phone without getting distracted." I asked if this was typical across cultures. "Every culture queues differently," she explained. "Some cultures, closeness is normal. Standing right behind the person ahead isn't rude. It's just how lines work where they're from. Personal space bubbles vary enormously. Japanese passengers seem almost allergic to getting too close. If the line moves forward and they're suddenly too near the person ahead, they'll quickly step back. It's almost reflexive." In Japan, this concept has a name: kanjo, roughly the awareness of invisible boundaries between people. We're taught from childhood to sense these boundaries on crowded trains, in elevators, in any shared space. The queue at an airport is no different. There's a proper distance, and falling short of it creates discomfort, for us as much as for the person ahead. Another staff member described what happens when there's a delay. If a counter closes unexpectedly or there's a system problem, reactions vary wildly. Some passengers demand explanations. Some try to switch lines. Some get visibly frustrated, check their watches repeatedly, sigh loudly. Japanese passengers usually just wait. If 30 minutes passes, they're still waiting. Same posture, same patience. It's almost unsettling how calm they remain. They might look at their watches once, acknowledge there's a delay, and then go back to waiting. No drama, no complaints to staff who can't fix the problem anyway. Is this patience admirable or simply cultural programming? I'm not sure there's a clear answer. Patience can be a virtue, or it can be passive acceptance of poor service. Sometimes speaking up is appropriate. What I can say is that airport workers consistently describe Japanese passengers as among the easiest to work with during delays, not because they don't care about their time, but because they don't make the situation worse by adding conflict. At the check-in counter, passengers face the first major interaction of their journey: documents, bags, seat preferences, special requests, potential complications. A senior check-in agent with 20 years of experience shared her observations. Japanese passengers typically have everything ready: passport open to the photo page, itinerary printed or immediately accessible on their phone. Asked about luggage weight, they know immediately, often to the kilogram. It's like they've rehearsed the interaction beforehand. They know what questions I'm going to ask and have the answers prepared. This preparation isn't accidental. Japanese culture places high value on junbi, preparation. Being unprepared is considered disrespectful to others because it wastes their time. I remember as a child, my parents would have us rehearse for important interactions. What will they ask? What do we need to bring? What could go wrong? Decades later, I still approach airports the same way. Not because I'm anxious, but because being ready feels like basic courtesy. She continued, "The organization extends to their luggage. Bags are properly labeled. Fragile items are clearly marked. Oversized items have been checked in advance. I can't remember the last time I had a Japanese passenger surprised by luggage fees. They've researched it. They know the limits before arriving. They've weighed their bags at home." I found one observation particularly interesting. When Japanese passengers have special requests, wheelchair assistance, bassinet for an infant, specific meal, they apologize, even though they have every right to request these things. They frame it as an imposition. "I'm sorry to trouble you, but I know this might be difficult, but if it's not too much trouble." It's not necessary. These are standard services. It's literally my job to arrange them. But that extra courtesy, it changes the entire interaction. I find myself wanting to do more for them, to find a better seat, to add a note in the system. The way they ask makes me want to help. This pattern, the advanced preparation, the organized presentation, the apologetic framing of requests, creates a smooth experience for both parties. The check-in takes less time, there are fewer misunderstandings. The agent doesn't feel rushed or pressured. Is this something explicitly taught? Something absorbed through observation? Probably both. But whatever its origin, it creates tangible differences in how these interactions unfold. Boarding. For airline staff, this is often the most stressful phase of passenger handling. Time pressure, anxiety about connections, competition for overhead bin space, the human desire to board first, even when there's an assigned seat waiting. A gate supervisor who has managed boarding for 15 years explained, "We make announcements. Premium passengers and passengers requiring assistance first. Now boarding rows 1 through 15. Zone 3, please proceed to gate." But many passengers ignore these entirely. They crowd the gate. They try to board early. They argue when stopped. They create confusion that delays everyone. He paused. What's interesting is which passengers follow instructions and which don't. He described what he called zone discipline. When we call Zone 3, Japanese passengers in Zone 4 don't move. They wait. Even if the gate area is nearly empty and they could easily slip through, they wait for their zone. It's such a contrast to, well, I won't name nationalities, but let's say not everyone shows the same discipline. I've had passengers in Zone 5 argue with me when I ask them to wait, but no one is boarding. Yes, and your zone hasn't been called. That's how it works. Another observation involved boarding efficiency. Japanese passengers board efficiently, boarding pass in hand, not in their pocket, not in their bag, ready to be scanned. No fumbling. They walk directly to their seat. They find it quickly. Seems like they've memorized the row number. They stow their luggage without blocking the aisle for excessive time. They sit down. The whole thing takes maybe 90 seconds. Some passengers take 5 minutes for the same process because they're still organizing, searching for things, asking questions. A flight attendant added an observation about luggage. What I hear in these observations is something beyond mere rule following. It's what the Japanese concept of meiwaku wo kakenai describes, not causing trouble for others. In a boarding context, this translates to specific behaviors: following zone calls, boarding quickly, considering bin space. Small decisions with collective impact. When everyone thinks this way, the system works. When people prioritize only themselves, the system breaks down. Once in the air, passengers are largely out of ground staff's observation, but the patterns continue when they land. A cabin cleaner at Changi who cleans arriving aircraft described what she finds. After most flights, the cabin is a mess. People leave trash in seat pockets, blankets are thrown on seats or on the floor, magazines are scattered everywhere. Food trays aren't fully closed. Sometimes there's food on the floor. Japanese flight sections are different. Blankets are often folded. Not perfectly, but folded. Headphones are returned to the pocket. Trash is consolidated, sometimes even bagged in the sickness bag for easy disposal. I'm not saying it's perfectly clean. It's still a space that needs professional cleaning, but the condition is better, consistently. Another observation came from immigration staff. Perhaps the most touching observation came from a lost and found officer. When Japanese passengers lose something, a wallet, a phone, a bag, they report it thoroughly. Exact description, color, brand, distinguishing characteristics, where they were standing, what time it might have been lost. And here's the striking thing: they're apologetic. They treat losing their own item as if they's inconvenienced us. "I'm so sorry to trouble you. I know you're busy. I apologize for this imposition. Thank you for taking the time, even though this is my fault. This is literally my job. You haven't done anything wrong." But that consideration, it makes me want to help them more. I'll check the cameras more carefully. I'll follow up personally. This pattern, treating service workers as people worthy of consideration rather than obstacles to manage, appears consistently across these observations. Whether it creates better outcomes is hard to measure objectively, but it certainly shapes how workers feel about these interactions. And workers who feel respected often provide better service in return. Let me be clear about the limits of these observations. Singapore's airport staff see millions of passengers. Individual observations are colored by memory bias, cultural assumptions, and the natural human tendency to notice patterns where none may exist. Negative experiences often leave stronger memories than positive ones. One rude passenger might outweigh 10 polite ones in memory. Moreover, Japanese passengers is not a monolithic category. Age matters. A young backpacker behaves differently from a business traveler. Travel experience matters. Frequent flyers know the system. First-time international travelers are learning. Individual personality matters enormously. Some Japanese people are impatient, some are disorganized, some are rude. These observations describe tendencies, not absolutes. What interests me is the consistency of these patterns across multiple observers. check-in agents, gate supervisors, cabin cleaners, immigration officers, lost and found staff, different roles, different perspectives, different interactions, yet similar observations. Something real is being captured here, not a genetic trait, not some mystical Japanese character, simply learned behaviors, patterns absorbed through education, environment, and cultural expectation. These behaviors can be learned by anyone, preparing documents in advance, following queue instructions, considering shared space, treating service workers with courtesy. None of this requires being Japanese. It requires choosing, day after day, to act with consideration for others. Changi Airport will continue to process millions of passengers from around the world. Staff will continue to observe patterns. Some will frustrate them. Some will delight them. Some will stay in their memory for decades. What moves me about these observations isn't national pride. It's the reminder that behavior is a choice. Every time we enter a shared space, an airport, a train station, a market, a museum, we choose how to be. We can make things easier for the people around us, or harder. We can treat service workers as humans worthy of consideration, or as obstacles to our convenience. We can leave a space better than we found it, or leave our mess for someone else to clean. These choices seem small, but they accumulate. They shape how others see us, how others see our countries, how interactions unfold across cultures. If you work in an airport or airline industry, I'd love to hear your observations. What patterns have you noticed? What behaviors make your job easier or harder? And if you're a frequent traveler, do these descriptions ring true? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more cultural exploration. Safe travels wherever your journey takes you. Changi Airport, Singapore Airport Staff, Passenger Behavior, Nationality, Japanese Tourists Airport, Airport Etiquette, Flight Attendant Observations, Q Culture Japan, Travel Manners, Meiwaku, Cultural Differences Travel, Airport Ground Staff, Customer Service Observations. Hook, 120 words. Introduction, 600 words. Part 1, 650 words. Part 2, 650 words. Part 3, 600 words. Part 4, 550 words. Reflection, 400 words. Outro, 300 words. Total, 4,500 words.